Before they bite, they bark. Before they hit you, they hit near you. Every single parent teetering on poverty does this. We work. We love. We do, and the stress of it all, the exhaustion, leaves us hollowed. These are two quotes from Stephanie Land's memoir and recent Netflix series called Made. It's about the life of her as a single mother after leaving her abusive husband and the harrowing life she endures. Both of these quotes really depict the gut-wrenching realities of, first, what relationship violence can manifest as, and second, the life that these victims may endure after. One of the most saddening parts of this series is learning about the prevalence and frequency of people who deal with domestic abuse and violence, and finding out that there aren't enough services out there to help people. And finally, the scary part is it can quite easily happen to anyone. Anyone's relationship can go down a dark path. What is someone to do when that happens? Hello, my name is Heather Robinson, and today I will be going more into depth about the protecting people who deal with domestic violence and who are survivors of domestic violence and abuse, and kind of ending that cycle in an organization that is working to help with this issue. I'll kind of talk about what different scenarios of what our life could look like if we help out this issue versus if we don't, and kind of what you can do right now to help. So, just kind of going back to the series for a second, I really love this series, and I thought it was a great connection to what's going on here. There's an article called Netflix's Made is an empathetic portrait of poverty that dispels the myth of bootstrapping. It's in Time magazine in 2021. And it basically talked about how, quote, it so vividly illustrates having friends and family doesn't always mean having anyone you can count on, which is why so many Americans must rely on social services. Social services that we're learning are not really out there enough for them. And I will kind of go into a few little facts about kind of get you more oriented into what's going on. Firstly, 1 in 3 women will be victims of sexual assault, and also 1 in 3 women are victims of intimate partner violence, and that comes from the CDC. Already we can see that this affects a big population of people. The nonprofit called A Safe Place cites on their website that domestic violence is the leading cause of injury in women. And also the CDC talks about how half of all homeless women and children are fleeing from domestic violence. So this kind of connection between homeless and once having a home, and then domestic abuse happens and now you don't. What's going on there? And this needs to be addressed. Finally, I will just say how domestic violence, it can happen to anyone. It can happen to you, it can happen to me, your children, your friends, your neighbors. So it's not something that we can just kind of put on the back burner and say, oh, it's just those type of people that are dealing with it. And getting on to kind of the organization that's really working to make changes in our community, and sadly it's actually the only organization in Wake County that provides services for domestic abuse victims and trying to stop the cycle of that. It's called Interactive Wake County, and their mission is really just dedicated to ending that cycle of domestic and sexual violence in Wake County and really rebuilding the lives of these individuals. There is a report recently back in 2020, that domestic abuse and family violence have increased around the world since social isolation and quarantine. So we're already seeing even more of an increase of this because of the pandemic. And something just to highlight about this organization is that more than 90% of Interact shelter residents do not return to their abusers, and that is a high number. And some of that is kind of chalked up to what they do as a service. Biggest things I will touch on, you can kind of read here what all they do, but I really want to talk about the emergency shelter that they provide. There was an article called, in 2015, in a journal article called Between the Abuser and the Street. And it really showed how survivors of domestic abuse and violence, they prefer certain shelters over others. So just a normal homeless shelter is not really the best place for these domestic abuse survivors, because a lot of times the security is not great, and their abusers can find them there. A lot of times they don't offer places for children to stay, and they don't provide the services to kind of help these individuals grow and soon go out and provide new opportunities for themselves. But what the article does talk about is how there's another type of shelter that kind of Interact does, and it's kind of a more private shelter. No one knows where this is located, and they also provide a lot of these other services there so that women can really rise from the ashes, is what you could say, and make a new home for themselves. So Interact has served a lot of people. As you can see, 9,500 of whom are direct victims of domestic and sexual violence. And because this is the only organization doing this, we really want to help this organization out. And so just before we kind of get into that, I want you to imagine that you come home and all that happens is you're constantly emotionally and physically abused, and you can't escape it. You're at your home with a place where you're supposed to feel safe, and you can't. And it's between leaving, and you don't know what's out there. There's no services that you know of. It's a very unknown future. Or staying in this relationship because you know you have a house, you know you have food, but you continue to take the abuse. Imagine your children having to watch you endure this pain, and even some children watching their parents return to their abuser because there's no other option, and seeing that they would rather take a beating than allow their children to starve. But if we look at another side of this, we can I want you to imagine now the choice to leave is not as difficult to make, because one of the hells is not as fiery as the other, and there are several support systems. Once you get the courage that it takes to leave and bring your children with you, you know that there are places to go, that there are people out there that care, and that you're able to teach your children what healthy relationships should actually look like. You can find a home, build a home again, and end the cycle. Now, to take action, there are many ways, because that is the most important thing right now for you to do. First is to donate some goods. So anything like clothing that we kind of take for granted, clothing, hygiene products, anything that someone could really use. Secondly is to give. Money really goes a long way, especially in organizations that want to expand and want to provide housing services, counseling services. All that costs money, but money that is well used. And the final thing is volunteering your time, and time is always a great thing to provide to people. It really shows that you care. And I'll leave you with this. Interact is on a mission to protect survivors of domestic violence, and with your help, their impact cannot be silenced, cannot be stopped. The research, the system, the way out, it's there. This organization has created it. All we need is your support to keep it running. Thank you.